You don't understand the depth of what it's like to find out at 63 years old that you have an entire generations of people from an entirely different part of the world than you thought you came from, that you have no stories of your grandparents, that you have no stories from other than what you can glean through ancestry and newspapers. You have no anecdotes. You have no personal knowledge, and you'll never be able to get those things unless someone is willing to say, oh, hey, I can help you with that. Obviously, it can't be healed. Obviously, it can't be fixed, but those little things that you grow up with that I know about my birth certificate dad's family, right? Those anecdotes about grandma and grandpa and uncle so-and-so. Like, I don't have those for my biological family, and that's what I'm missing. That's what I guess I'm longing for. I'm longing for someone in that family to kind of say, and look at me and go, wow, you really do look like us. We don't have to have dinner. I don't care. I have a family. I'm content. I've got 4 kids. I've got 7 grandkids. I'm busy, tons of friends, tons of connections in this world, and don't want a connection with someone who doesn't want one with me. Anyone.
Welcome to DNA Surprises, a podcast that delves into the world of unexpected DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Alexis Auersalt. In July 2021, my life took a surprising turn when I found out that I'm an NPE, a person who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. Join me as we explore the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. Get ready to unravel the astonishing journeys that begin with a simple DNA test. This is DNA Surprises. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And sometimes it's the first clue in solving a DNA mystery. In this week's episode, Kelly shares how a surprising detail in an old photograph of her parents sparked questions about her paternity. Nearly 4 decades later, she learned the truth about her paternity and her ethnicity. Kelly shares what happened after she made her discovery and how her surprise has affected her relationship with her mother. She also discusses how she's navigating her best next steps. Thank you for sharing your story, Kelly.
My name is Kelly, and I am 63, and I am from New York. My DNA surprise story is something that I confirmed in May of 2024 when I was probably in my mid-20s. I was looking at some photo albums, and I happened to notice a photo of my mom and who my birth certificate dad is. And I looked at the photo for the first time after seeing it many times. I said, wow, I think my mom is pregnant in this photo. The photo says on the side 1961. And I always thought that they were married in 60, and I was born the year after. So I got a little curious about that. And I confronted her. I said, it looks like you're pregnant in this photo. She got kind of defensive, and she said, well, I am. Well, and I said, okay, well, not a big deal. That's fine. And I said, but so is dad my dad? And she gave me a very curt yes, just like that. And I didn't push it after that. I just kind of let that sit, but it was a haunting yes. And I let it go, and I had 1 child at the time, and then life went forward, and I'm raising kids, and I go back to college, and So fast forward to May of this year. Somewhere in the beginning of this year, I started to have that real hankering to ask her again. And it was like really sitting on my heart deeply. And she had some knee surgery done, and we were joking around with her roommate, who I think was Jewish. She was celebrating Passover, and Easter was around the corner, and we were talking about ethnicity, and I was feeling really kind of like pissy and arrogant. And I was like, yeah, well, we're German and we're Irish and supposedly Native American, and, that is if I'm not the mailman's kid.
Ooh.
And then, my mom is in the rehab and I'm feeling like really annoyed. So I go home and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go on Ancestry, because I already had an account for doing research for a family prior. I noticed a message in my Ancestry account that hadn't come through. I hadn't noticed in my email. And it was from this long-lost person that I knew. I knew his parents, and my parents were friends with his parents. And he said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but it turns out that for some reason I'm connected to your family, to my dad's side of the family, my birth certificate father's side of the family. I said, oh, interesting. So he said, oh, do you know anything about this or that? I said, of course, I remember you. I wrote him back and I said, I'll look into it. I called my mom and I said, hey, so-and-so got in touch with me and says that he's related to Dad's family. And his dad was adopted. And she said, oh, well, it was the swinging 60s. So, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know what that has anything to do with it. I'm asking about his dad. Long story short, it really caused me to do a lot of research on my birth certificate father's family side. And I got a whole bunch of information, and I spent the entire day when I was supposed to be working researching on Ancestry, my birth certificate father's family. And I was kind of reporting back and forth to her. I had brought her home from the rehab that day. We had a long conversation about her upbringing and her trauma. She had been abandoned when she was 3 by both of her parents. Her dad had left, and then her mom abandoned the kid. So there was a history of neglect and abandonment for her and her 2 siblings. So we went all through that. We repeated the story about her finding out that the person that was her dad was being billed as her uncle, and talked about that lie. And this is me not knowing anything. I go back, I do research. And later in the day, I said, well, this is what I found out about Dad's family. Okay? I found this, and this. And I said, and that's all based on if he's really my dad, if I really am a last name omitted.
Yeah.
I said, so am I? I said, I haven't asked you this in a long time. And I said, you told me in my 20s when I asked you that he was. So am I? There was quietness. And she said, well, you're Italian. In that moment, it was like this veil came off. And I can only describe it as like the ground kind of shifting underneath me. And I had assured her, I said, of course I'll always love Dad. There's no judgment, but that truth on that day was like groundbreaking.
First of all, I'm so sorry, because that's a long time to sit with that suspicion and have it dismissed and then get this confirmation later. Was the suspicion something that really bothered you for many years? Was it troubling at the time? Or, what was your kind of point of view on this idea that maybe your dad wasn't your biological father?
So it was more of, at first it was kind of like a funny question. It was like, gee, I wonder. Right? And then it was just a curiosity thing. And then I had been told, and I've listened to so many podcasts, and this is so very common with children who are dark-eyed with parents who have blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been told these stories about, we had an Indian princess in our family, and there was a picture of her in front of a teepee, and, you know, there was a native tribe here on Long Island, and, you know, I had this vast, like, association with this history. And so a lot of people would say, wow, you look Italian. And I'd be like, no, I'm Irish and I'm German and I'm French and I'm English and I have a little bit of Native American. So it's kind of like this funny plaything, right? But it was a question.
Yeah.
And it became a deeper question after a conversation with some friends where I had a science teacher friend and a math teacher friend. And we were just kind of shooting the breeze. And the one guy said, wait, so your parents both have blue eyes? And I was, yeah. He's like, no frickin' way. There's no way that you have brown eyes and they have blue eyes. I'll give you $100 to get some kind of DNA test. And at then, I only thought there were paternity tests. I didn't think about ancestry. I didn't even have any association with it. So I was like, yeah, haha, maybe. I think that was around 2008.
Okay, so that's kind of before the proliferation of Ancestry and those consumer DNA tests.
Absolutely. So fast forward, you know, it's a question, but I'm busy. I get divorced in the meantime. So there's a lot of things going on with that. I'm resettling my life. And my birth certificate father passed away in 2017. He had a return of aggressive prostate cancer. So he passed, and there was kind of like a little joke. I don't know if it was between my daughter and me. It's kind of like, well, get a hair sample, get something from Grandpa, like get his clothes. And I was like, I have no idea how much this costs. I don't know any of all of this. And I had always said, you know, even though it was a question, I was like, well, I would never tell him if I found out. I would leave it. I would not want him to have that information. So in 2018, my other daughter, I have 4 children. I have 3 daughters and a son. So my eldest did a 23andMe test. And my ex had done an ancestry test. So he's Italian. He found out that he wasn't as Italian as he thought he was, but just all from that area, right? So you find out that you're not just Southern European, you have Eastern European, and you have Turkey, and you have Armenia mixed in. So he didn't know that. But given those facts, her 23andMe test came back, and her percentage of Italian was high for me having the percentage of supposed Northern European that I'm supposed to have. And I was like, that's a little strange. She's like 55%. How can that be?
So this is before you talked to your mom?
Yeah, this is 2018. This is after my dad has passed. And I said, I think I made it lighthearted with her. I was like, hey, you know, so-and-so did a test and her percentage of Italian came back higher than it should be. Do we have any Italian people on your side? She was like, I don't know. So again, move forward. And in May, it all came to light.
Okay. Did she apologize, offer any information at that time?
So since I had been doing all that ancestry research that day, I was like, well, you know, who is it? She's like, oh, I'm not going to say, just do your research. I was like, no, actually, I'm not going to do my research. You're going to give me a name, and I can't do research without a name, so it doesn't work that way. My mom, who is really not a great speller, gives me the name and spells it almost exactly correctly, which is kind of odd for her because she's really not great with that. And I went on Ancestry that night, looked it up, all these names with that last name came up. And of course, I'm trying to whittle it down. And that's all she gave me. So the next morning I called her and she's like, well, what's up? And I was like, well, I need a little more information. Does this person have any siblings? So she told me the name of the sibling. And then I knew I had the right family. On the day that I asked her, I said, well, how did that happen? Does Dad know? Did Dad know? And she's like, well, not to my knowledge. I said, so how did this happen? She said, I was with this person and we had a little fun and I got pregnant. And then he wanted me to go to a clinic and have a termination. And I didn't know anything about that. And I didn't want to do that. And I said, so you just got with Dad? He said, yep. She had known my birth certificate dad since 3rd grade. And they had been very good friends. I know that he was crushing on her probably from the time he met her. I later found out that he would set up dates for her during junior high and high school. She would say to him, I like so-and-so, and he would go and make it happen.
So she meets your biological father. They have some sort of relationship. Yes. She gets pregnant. Yes. He does not want her to carry the pregnancy to term. Correct. She doesn't want to do that. Right. So then she goes to her very dear friend, yes, your birth certificate dad, and has him raise you as his own. Now, did he know that she was pregnant when they got together?
So she says no. And she says that if he did, he didn't say anything. However, the story had been that I was, how did she put it? She said I came a month early. Okay, so she just fudged the numbers, and so because I was a sizable baby for coming a month early. I was, 6 pounds something ounces, normal weight, no complications whatsoever. So I didn't put that together until the very end.
Sure. Okay. So she says that your father didn't know.
Correct.
Do you feel upon reflection that maybe he knew, or did he treat you any differently or anything growing up?
So I kind of feel that he didn't know. He did not treat me differently. They did go on to have my brother 2 years later. And I think my relationship with him was probably better than my brother's with him. We did a lot of things together. He took me to church. I don't think he treated me any differently than what I would imagine any normal dad treats their child like. Having been married, he was a good dad. He was good to my mom. They were solid as far as they were married at 20. They were both 20 years old. So young. When he passed, they had been married, I think, for 56 years. So he was there and he was a good dad.
What are you thinking and feeling in this moment as your mom finally tells you the truth and gives you some information to go off of?
I felt relief in a sense because it answered so many questions about my looks in one moment. And I felt absolutely betrayed by her. And that betrayal is so deep because I don't judge her for the actions that she took as a young woman. I don't hold that against her. But on reflecting on this, one of the things that she had said to me in the conversation, I said, well, were you going to tell me? And she said, I was going to take it to my grave. She said, you're never going to tell me. I was going to leave you a note. Oh. And that, I think, made it even worse. It felt like it was more of a betrayal.
Yeah.
My interactions with her since regarding this have been, she's been guarded. She's tried to answer questions, but it's more in the terms of like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm sorry. But, I'm sorry, but it's that qualifier.
Yeah.
So it has, the last, I would say 7 months have been really, really hard. I check in on her. I do call. I do still keep my commitment that I made to my dad on his deathbed, that I would take care of her. But it is so hard. It is such a feeling of loss of truth. So that has been prevalent in terms of how I feel with her. It was ground shifting. Every time I look in the mirror, it's still this really, it's still mind-boggling. So to move forward, of course, I did what everyone does. I went on Facebook and I started looking up the family. And also on that day, when I had gone on Ancestry without even knowing anything, I ordered a DNA test that morning before even speaking with her. I was like, let me just do this.
Oh, wow.
I had such a reluctance for so many years. I don't want to spit in the tube. I don't want to share my DNA. All these, things that everyone kind of struggles with. And I was like, oh, well, I'm spitting the tube.
Yeah. Yeah. And then lo and behold, she shares this information.
She did.
So did you end up sending off your DNA?
I not only sent off an Ancestry test, but I ordered 23andMe as well. So I ordered both. I let them sit. I let the Ancestry sit for about 3 weeks. I got the tube from 23andMe, and on the same day, I spit in both tubes and sent them both off. And so in the meantime, I started kind of building a tree and researching on Ancestry, finding all I could about my family, my heritage. I did find my biological father's profile. I found my half-siblings' profiles on Facebook. I didn't want to contact them through there because I felt like that's just so random, I didn't even know what I was going to do.
Is he still alive?
Yes, living 3 miles away from me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That has to be hard. I mean, you hear about the people that they're like, I just want to drive past their house.
And I have. And I have, because the internet is proliferated with information. You can literally find anything. So anyone who thinks they can't be found, it's not even a creep factor anymore. It's just like,
no.
all you got to do is any one of these search engines and you get a phone number and an address. So,
yeah.
I'm not immune to it either. So I did do a lot of research. I did find out about my grandparents on my biological father's side. I found out about my half-siblings. And I toyed with whether I should try to connect with them. I waited until I got the DNA results back, which confirmed. In the meantime, I had called my daughter and I said, wait, while I'm waiting for this test, can you bring up the results of your 23andMe test?
Sure, because she would have family matches as
right.
well.
So she brought them up, and sure enough, she came up as a match to the people on my biological father's side. Now, he's not on either one, but she matched to my half-sibling, and she matched to 2 cousins on his side.
When you were looking at them on Facebook, what were you able to learn about them as people? And did any of that make you want to reach out to them or not reach out to them?
Yeah, and nothing made me not want to reach out. There were no red flags. They seemed like, kind of like a normal family. So I got confirmed. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to reach out? I found pictures of my grandparents and my great uncles and all of these people. And I'm like, okay. So I ended up sending a short note in July to my half-sibling. And it was just really hi, I see that we are related, because she was named on one of the platforms. I see that we're related, and I have some information as to how that could be, looking to see if you're interested in communicating. And I gave her my email address and my phone number. And I didn't expect to hear from her. So I was really, really stressed out. Later on that day, I was talking to my son, and he's like, Mom, why don't you take one of those edibles that we got? So I was like, you're right. I think I'm going to do that. It's 4:00 in the afternoon, and I'm like, I'm going to go to bed early because I'm really stressed. Oh, wow. And I take this, and I think it had like THC in it, like a little bit of THC. And having had some prior experience with that, which I don't do on a regular basis, I remembered that it has like this effect on my brain. But I'm not thinking, and I go to sleep. At 8:30, I'm woken up out of this dead sleep, and there's a male voice, and he says, Kelly? And I was like, yeah. He's like, this is so-and-so's husband. And I was like, oh, hi. So he's like, yeah, we got your message, and we kind of want to know what this is about. Like, my wife can't even talk. She's in shock. So now I'm really having a hard time because first of all, I'm woken from a dead sleep. Secondly, I took this thing and I'm like, okay, let me get my mind together. So I'm trying to tell him this story, and it's not working well. And he's like, well, she's just too shocked to speak. And he's like, well, does my father-in-law know about you? And I said, not to my knowledge. And I gave him the little story that my mom gave me. And I said, they told me that I looked Native American, and I'm just blurting out these random pieces of information, knowing that this is not going well. And he said, well, I don't know. He goes, I'm going to have to talk to her about this, and we'll see what happens. I said, well, I can send you an email, because I'm thinking, I can be a little bit more coherent if I send an email with the information. She said, no, don't contact us. I said, okay. So I let it go. We hung up, and I said, well, I'm going to respect them. I'm not going to contact them again. And I was devastated by that phone call. I was devastated because I couldn't communicate correctly. I was devastated because it was so short. And I was devastated because he said in the phone call, well, what are you hoping to get out of this? I said, I don't want any money, and I don't want anything from you, inheritance or anything. I want the history of my family and medical information. So I let it be. And I dropped it. And that was mid-July. So let me tell you what I found out about my biological dad. That's really important to me. And then I'll move forward. From social media, on my half-sibling's account, I found out that my biological dad was musical. And I'm a musician. I've been musical all my life. It's what my degree is in. I'm in a band. I'm a music director. I'm a composer. And I never knew where that came from, because neither of my parents that I grew up with have a lick of musical talent. Like, my mother can't sing for beans, and my BCF was just not far behind in that. And when I found out that he had musical talent, I was like, oh. Then I found out that my grandfather's brother was training to be an opera singer and had stage fright and never ended up being an opera singer. There's a story with him that I can't repeat because it would give away, but he ended up owning a famous animal and touring the world with this animal.
You're learning so much and you're connecting these dots, and it's making so much about you make sense.
So much.
What feelings are coming up at that point? Because some people that I speak to, you know, they have this what if, what could have been if I'd been raised around that. Other people, it's more just validating in terms of better understanding of themselves. How do these revelations sort of hit you?
A little bit of both. There's a little bit of wonderment of, I wonder what it would have been like to even know my biological father, even if they weren't together, but knowing that he was musical. Because I did find out that he sang in a musical group and that he was a lead singer in a group, local, nothing famous, nothing, you know, but kind of like what I do. You know, I'm in a band and we're local. So there's a little wonderment, like, I wonder if we would have sang together. I wonder if there would have been more development of my skill than had happened. And then there's this kind of just, oh, that's where it comes from. It's like this deep settling acknowledgement of who I am as a human being. It's this deep understanding of the real big differences that I started noticing in my adult life between myself and my brother and my parents. Like, he's so much like them and I'm so much not. Like, I know I've inherited by nurture things from my birth certificate dad, right? But I'm so very different. I'm so different culturally speaking. I'm so different in terms of just my body stature. Both my parents are big people. I'm this tiny little thing. I'm dark. I tan. I have olive complected skin that everyone tried to tell me about. And I was like, no, it's my Native American heritage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So finding out has been, while I feel so betrayed by my mom for holding it, for taking years away from me that I could have spent kind of figuring out how to go about this. Like, taking these years, like, at least have told me when my dad passed. Like, I get, you kept it a secret. At least have told me somewhere. That's a deep hurt. And I don't know how to reconcile with that hurt right now. That's been a big issue.
And it's still so new.
It's so new.
And it's so new. And also, you've been contending with it in some way for a really long time in the back of your mind. So that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a long time. I'm 63. So it's kind of like, wow. Overall, the validation and finding out who those people were, at least on the surface, at least peripherally, through Ancestry, through Facebook, through one second cousins really oversharing of photos. I was able to get so many photos of my biological father, even when he was like, when he got married, and like a few photos of him in that era. I have nothing of him as a child. So no photos of him as a kid. Photos of aunts and uncles, like great aunts and uncles and cousins, finding out that I grew up near cousins of cousins and like around the corner from a cousin of a cousin's family. So there's all these wildly different feelings that happen. Finding out that my great aunts were educated women. It's just this like core validation of who I am. So that's been good. The kind of emptiness and what I've been struggling with since July, since that phone call, is, so I made another reach out in September to a cousin. I said, let me just not bother the sibling. Let me see if I can gather some information. I contacted someone who manages a test on one of the platforms. And I said, hey, I'm related. I see that I'm related to so-and-so. Just looking for some information. And she wrote back to me really quickly. I can see that she's on every day. She does a lot of research. I also happen to know from looking at the DNA tree on one of the platforms that she is my biological father's niece. She gets back to me and she says, well, how old are you? And, I said, I know that these are my grandparents from ancestry. And you can tell, she's like, well, how old are you? And what else do you know? Were you adopted? And I said, no, I'm not adopted. I can give you some information. So she's clearly pulled in now. And I told her my story in a short form, And then I said, so to be forward, I did contact so-and-so in July, and I had a conversation, and there's been no contact since. So she said, well, I'm going to get in touch with so-and-so, and then I'll have to get back to you because I can't, overstep. So this was on September 10th. And on September 11th, I got another note from my half-sibling. And it was so devastating to me because, I respected the no contact. So I didn't reach out to her. She writes to me, I spoke with my husband and now my cousin, and both revealed the details you shared with them. Some things my husband told me from your conversation with him didn't make sense to me. No shit, Sherlock, because it didn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
So she goes on to say, I hoped my lack of contact would have made it clear that we are not interested in connecting with you. I'm not sure what you hope to gain from this, and I don't want to be mean or cruel, but having you contact people in my family could ruin lives. We've had so much devastation in our family, and I don't think we could handle anything else. News like this could cause irreversible damage. It's much like why your mom most likely didn't tell your dad for all the years they were married. I pray you had a happy childhood and are surrounded by people who love you and whom you love deeply. I also hope getting the information you needed to validate what you felt for many years has given you closure. On the other hand, I completed 23andMe many years ago because it was given to me as a gift. I never intended or considered attempting to reveal a connection such as ours. Here's the clincher for me. This information has caused much stress and anxiety in my life. I need to protect my family, and I hope you can respect my request that you stop contacting any of us. I hope confirming your thoughts brings you some peace. I'm so sorry for any disappointment this may bring you, and I hope you understand my challenging position. You should know there is no history of any abnormal or severe medical issues to be aware of. I wish you nothing but happiness. Best wishes. In other words, polite.
Yeah.
Polite F you.
Yeah. And I do just want to check in. Are you beating yourself up about the fact that you had been asleep and on an edible for that first conversation? Like, do you feel like that impacted their reaction to you at all? Or, okay, no. Good. Because I was like, that does not excuse. Okay,
I really understand. You don't understand the depth of what it's like to find out at 63 years old that you have an entire generations of people from an entirely different part of the world than you thought you came from, that you have no stories of your grandparents, that you have no stories from other than what you can glean through ancestry and newspapers. You have no anecdotes. You have no personal knowledge, and you'll never be able to get those things unless someone is willing to say, oh, hey, I can help you with that. Obviously, it can't be healed. Obviously, it can't be fixed. But those little things that you grow up with, that I know about my birth certificate dad's family, right? Those anecdotes about grandma and grandpa and uncle so-and-so. Like, I don't have those for my biological family. And that's what I'm missing. That's what I guess I'm longing for. I'm longing for someone in that family to kind of say, and look at me and go, wow, you really do look like us. We don't have to have dinner. I don't care. I have a family. I'm content. I've got 4 kids. I've got 7 grandkids. I'm busy. Tons of friends, tons of connections in this world, and don't want a connection with someone who doesn't want one with me. Anyone.
Right, right. Has there been any point where you considered going directly to him?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's my next big question for myself is, what do I do? Because he's 83. Like, how many years are there? And how do I go about it? One of my real Italian friends said, just send him a note. Send him a note. This is your daughter. Send him a Christmas card.
Oh, yeah, but it's so complicated,
It's so complicated.
Right?
It's not that easy. And I'm not confrontational that way. So it really is like, how do I go about that? Do I go about it? What do I sit with? How do I manage? And I've just let it sit. And there's not a day that one aspect or facet of this, mostly the letter from her, doesn't ring in my head in some way, shape, or form. That clear, I don't want to understand. You cause me stress. And I want to say, honey, you don't understand what it's like to find out that your dad is not your dad. I love my dad. I loved my birth certificate father. It doesn't take anything away from my relationship with him. Nothing. But
right.
I don't have anyone to say, like, hey, I'm a musician too.
Oh.
I don't know if I want to reach out. And that's where I've been stuck now since September. So that's kind of where I've been sitting with this. So I've taken up this distraction of listening to online apocalyptic survival novels on Audible.
That's a good distraction.
It's something. It's just like, okay, I don't want to think about it. I just don't want to delve in. Sometimes I don't even listen to the podcasts because I'll hear something and the tears will well up. And I'll be like, okay, just let me get my grip and go on.
Sure. And it's, only you can know the next best step for yourself because
right.
Everyone's situations are so unique. I was going to ask you, while you're kind of figuring out what you want to do next, what things are helping you aside from your apocalyptic audiobooks?
I think time is helping somewhat. In terms of my relationship with my mother, nothing is really helping except my own willingness to just forge forward and do the right thing by her. She's 83. My brother is not really involved in her care, and I want to honor what I told my dad I would do. So I do it. And I buck up and I call her, and she's always been kind of on my nerves anyway, so it just makes it that much harder. But I just push through. We go to the same church where I'm a music director, and so I have to kind of see her on that level. In terms of dealing with what to do, I'm on several Facebook groups. I listen to the podcasts. I try to glean helpful hints. There's another facet to the story, which is not really mine to tell, but the guy who contacted me, who ended up contacting me, which kind of like pushed me over the research edge, it turns out that he is related to my dad. And it turns out that he is my birth certificate dad's son. That was a kind of a shock. The circumstances are funky and weird. He is younger than me. So this is a strange thing. I've welcomed him. He's not related to me whatsoever. So he's like my brother from another mother father now at this point.
Right. Yeah.
But he is in his journey a little bit further ahead of me. And so when he finally decided to tell me how he thought he was related to me, I said, well, I have something I got to tell you. Because I knew by that point. And we found out that we're not actual siblings. But he's been so supportive, and I have been so supportive to him. So this has been a really weird thing. Anything that he's needed to know about my dad, my birth certificate dad, I've given. We've met. He came in with his wife to visit over the summer. We went to graveyards, and I copied pictures and sent him things. We're in constant contact, and he's been a real help along the way.
That's amazing, because you're on both sides.
Right. And he's so interested in his history and had done all of his research and found out, oh, that's not true either. And so he also met with my mom because, as I said, it was a family connection and it's a funky situation. So she was willing to meet with him and gave him all the information that she could give him.
Now, you, through this discovery, had a big ethnicity shift.
Oh, my goodness.
It sounds like you've grown up around the Italian community. You mentioned you have Italian friends. Your biological father doesn't live too far from you. So you're in New York.
Yep.
Like, there's large Italian communities there. Have you spent any time kind of diving into that side?
So I've done research on the area that my family's from. I'm really interested in history. So I'm interested, where did everyone come from? Like, what part of Italy? So I've done a lot of questioning of my Italian friends, and I do have a lot of Italian friends. And my ex was Italian, and everyone thought I was Italian. So,
right, your kids are Italian, yeah.
But I didn't identify as Italian, to quote a popular phrase. So it's strange. I mean, I've been around it so much, so I kind of know it. And I have recipes from my mother-in-law, right? We were married for 30 years. And so I have a whole history of that culture. I haven't delved in except to look into possibly like what the chances were of me getting an Italian passport, which now I understand you kind of need to do, like, you kind of have to have like birth certificates. You need to have acknowledged paternity. I can get another kind of passport and go to Italy. But it would be lovely to have. So for me, that's a sore point for me. It's something that I'm missing out on because I can't make that connection. I can't just say, hey, can you just sign this off? I really don't want anything from you, but I'd love to have an Italian passport based on the fact that my grandparents are from Italy.
Yeah.
And I do want to travel there.
What advice do you have for a parent who is keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
I wholeheartedly, out of this experience, believe that that is something that should be revealed to a child, especially when they're an adult. I believe that information, even if it's given in secret, even if it's told quietly, it should be told to the individual, because once you're an adult, it really ceases to be the parent's story. It's the child's story. And it's important to have that knowledge. You can put disclaimers around the story. You can say, please don't go to, or this is why I kept it from you. Maybe there's abuse. Maybe there's a real legitimate, like really serious reason why it was kept a secret, for safety purposes even. But once you're beyond that point, at least tell the person when their birth certificate parent passes. I mean, find a time. It's not about you anymore once you're an adult. It's about that person, and it's so significant, and it's so important to have that validation, and it would have been so helpful to have even earlier than this time. That's my advice.
And what advice do you have for someone who just uncovered a DNA surprise?
I would say find all the support that you can possibly find. Relate to all the people. Listen to all the stories of people who have gone through this. Cry, feel, be angry, write, journal, find a therapist. I haven't found one yet, but that's on my bucket list, is to find some kind of a trauma therapist to process this with, as opposed to distracting myself with maybe novels, but find support. And I guess I would also say, take what's good, take what is helpful, and run with it, and treasure it. And what's not helpful, talk about in therapy. Find a way to work it out. There's no undoing it. So it's really just find as much support as possible, and be authentic and tell the story. Tell the story. It's important. I'm telling the story. I mean, I've had second thoughts about doing the interview several times because the story hasn't progressed at all. I feel stuck, and you're going to feel stuck at times, and reach out to other people maybe who are stuck.
Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. And I also want to say that I think it's important that we tell the stories for people that are in all different places with their journey. So there's going to be the people who are right at the beginning. There's going to be people who might have the quote unquote happy ending, maybe not a happy ending. And then there's going to be people who are mid-journey like you are, and maybe not sure where they're going to go next. So I'm really grateful to you for sharing your story as it is right now. And I wish you so much luck and just positivity. And I hope for you that you figure out the next best step.
Thank you.
Whatever that is, as you move through this.
I so appreciate your podcast. I so appreciate your questions. And I so appreciate the way you speak with people and how you interview and how you help pull stories out of people. And I so appreciate your deep empathy and compassion. It comes through so clearly. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexis.
Thanks again to Kelly for sharing her story. If you have a DNA surprise that you'd like to share, please submit your story at dnasurprises.com. And for early, ad-free access to episodes, join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/DNA Surprises. Until next time. This episode of DNA Surprises was hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexis Auerselt. It was mixed and mastered by Josh Auerselt of Siren Recording Studios.